Should we get started then?
Yeah, so if you want to kind of just introduce yourself and tell us a bit about yourself and what you do.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Timothy James. I'm an archaeologist and a paleontologist based in South Dakota. I travel across the United States doing different paleontology and archaeology digs. A lot of my research is focused on early proboscideans, so elephants, specifically Gomphotheres from the Espanola Basin. And I also do a lot of research studying the sediments from Hall's Cave, which represents a complete record of the last 22,000 years. And so we're doing a zooarchaeology slash paleoecology project looking at the changes in body size with pocket gophers over the last 22,000 years. So that's one of my other projects. And currently, I've been actually working here in the East Coast, doing excavations in Vermont and New Hampshire, looking at different historical sites from the late 1800s and early 1900s, as well as working on some Paleo-Indian sites. And before that, I was in Fargo, North Dakota, working on a bison kill site just outside of the city in West Fargo. That was really cool. And before that, I did a very large excavation in Deadwood, South Dakota, digging up some of the remains of Chinatown, as well as the earliest gold mining flow into Black Hills. So it's been an eventful year for archaeology and an eventful year for me, and I'm excited to share you guys some of that information.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Because obviously doing that kind of stuff in America and the kind of I've not been there and done it kind of thing. I've been to Italy and experienced what it's like to dig there. But have you been to the UK and done excavation work?
I have not been to the UK to do excavation work. I would love to. I was actually supposed to go do a big excavation in South Africa this summer, but as you know, COVID-19 kind of put a damper on that.
Like with your work, how do you kind of excavate and process
Okay.
recording and kind of that stuff?
So currently there's two types of archaeology and paleontology I do. So cultural resource management is one of the main parts of archaeology I do. I'm sure you guys are familiar. You have similar programs out in the UK. Basically what it is we'll do surveys of a certain area. For example, we did a 22,000 acre survey in Western North Dakota around the Medicine Pole Hills, which is very important to the indigenous peoples known as the Lakota. This is potentially where the Sundance actually originated from, potentially. So that was really interesting. So what we'll do is we'll hike around 10 to 15 miles a day, maybe even 20 miles a day. And while we're hiking, we'll spread out about 15 meters apart from each other, and we'll hike these transects. We'll basically comb through the entire field in the entire area. And every time we find artifacts or features that are noticeable from the surface, we will mark those on a global positioning unit or mark it in ArcGIS, and then we'll determine which sites are eligible for further review. And then we'll go back and do a phase one, which is shovel testing. And then if we continue to find features, we'll start to even do a phase two or phase three, which involves a mitigation project. So excavation to protect these from infrastructure projects. So it's very common that we'll be working on dam projects or large wind farms, stuff like that. And basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to limit the damage to our indigenous and cultural history in America by having archaeologists be the first people out on any given site. Paleontology is very similar. So paleontologists will also go out and do similar work. Now, this isn't in every US state, but states where there's a high probability of finding fossils, like, for example, if they're building a new road in Badlands National Park, somebody like me will have to go out and make sure that they look at every last little tiny bit of dirt that is dug up to determine whether or not there is or is not fossils there. So that's one of the projects, one of the methods that we use for doing field work that makes up probably around 75% of the field work I do. The other 25% is academic related. So I'll be going out with natural history museums and we'll do what is considered prospecting, or we'll excavate a specific site. So these methods are a little slower. So in CRM, we'll do something like 30 pits in one day with a crew of 5 people. But if I'm doing an academic dig, like for example, the dig I did in Jemez, New Mexico, and the ancestral area of these people in the Jemez Valley, we excavated an entire commoner structure, but we would only really get done 1 or 2 units a day because we're giving it a lot more close thought and mapping each and every individual artifact we find. Whereas CRM archaeologists will usually collect the artifacts, and unless they're large, then they'll map them. So there's 2 different methods involved. It's very similar with paleontology as well. So the stuff I might collect on a paleontology mitigation project, like an Oriodont jaw or part of a Stylemmes extinct tortoise, is not necessarily the same stuff I would collect working for an academic institution. So for an academic institution, what I'm looking for is horizons where bones are coming out of, so altitude in the Badlands. And we're also looking for, associated sites. So if I'm doing a CRM project or a mitigation project for paleo, I'll collect each and every fossil. But if I'm doing an academic project, I'll actually leave the vast majority of fossils on the surface so I can help determine where the horizons and where the altitudes I need to work. And so then when I find a bone exposed, what I'll do is I'll dig 3 feet in each direction of that bone. And then each bone I find, I'll continue that process. And the idea behind that is to find an associated site so that we can find a individual animal skeleton that we can further study from there.
Fossils is a very rare thing to find in my job because I work in commercial archaeology. So we do a lot of excavations and evaluations, but the main kind of fossils we come across are like ammonites or belemnites. What else? I mean, there's devil toenails just everywhere. I mean, because
that's cool.
Because where I'm from and where we kind of dig in the area is like a glacial layer where it melted, and so we get a lot of where the seabed would have been. So it's mainly just kind of sea fossils, So we don't really get anything else, which is a shame because I did find a marine crocodile's tooth at one point.
Was it an ichthyosaur or a mosasaur?
I don't have a clue.
Ichthyosaurs. The UK has a really rich history of, finding marine reptiles. I mean, as you know, Mary Anning worked in Lyme Regis, finding some of the first, marine reptiles, which actually allowed us to begin the science of paleontology. So I've always wanted to get out there and do some fossil hunting on that shore.
It was when I was doing environmental science and we were taking samples from a site, and that's when we just came across like this ammonite that was like really shiny, kind of like a rainbow colored effect, I guess, on it.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
And then that's when we found the tooth, and then someone researched it and found out to be a marine crocodile tooth, but I couldn't tell you what type.
Oh, wow, probably some kind of dinosaur or something like that. Marine crocodiles are fascinating.
It was quite small. It was probably like an inch, so it wasn't that large. So how did you kind of get started in archaeology? Like, where did it start for you?
So that's a great question. I come from Albuquerque, New Mexico, and New Mexico actually has the most documented archaeological sites of any state in the United States. We're famous for sites like Chaco Canyon. For example, in the city of Albuquerque, you even have Petroglyph National Monument, and you have the Coronado Historic Site, which is misnamed, but it's an indigenous Puebloan site. And, just being from that area, I was always influenced by the very rich cultural history that abounded there. So from a very young age, I went to the Natural History Museum, the Maxwell Museum of Anthropology at the University of New Mexico. And I got to tour all the different, sites, as a very young child. And I would go to some of the indigenous feasts and learn more about their culture in real time, specifically with the Jemez people and the Navajo people. Paleontology has always been my first love, but archaeology has also been an interest of mine as well. What actually originally got me into archaeology was kind of an interesting turn of events. So, like I said, I had been immersed in cultures and everything growing up in the Albuquerque area, but I never really considered archaeology as a career because I always wanted to be a paleontologist. But, through things changing in my teenage years, I found myself at a military college. And by the time I was at military college at 16, I had kind of, oh yeah, and by the way, college in the US means post high school. So it's not the same as it is in the UK. I know that you guys call like high school college or something.
Yeah.
But it's different out here. Anyway, I took a class on cultural anthropology while going to New Mexico Military Institute. And that actually rekindled my interest, and I changed my goals from going into the Army as an officer to pursuing a career in anthropology. So from there, I transferred to the University of New Mexico in Albuquerque and started working at the New Mexico Museum of Natural History and the Fossil Prep Lab, and working in the Maxwell Museum of Anthropology in the collections, and working at the Holocaust Museum in downtown in the collections as well. So doing all of that was really cool. And when I turned 18, I actually did my field school, and I was lucky enough to get to excavate a great kiva in Farmington, New Mexico, which is in northern New Mexico, not far from Mesa Verde, if you know where that is. And
yeah, I've heard of it.
yeah, Great Kiva is a really fascinating site to get to excavate because it's not often that you get to do that. So it's a religious site that represents the, the indigenous peoples, the Puebloan peoples coming from the lower world to the middle world and then up to the upper world. So Spider Grandmother helped these peoples come from the different worlds until they finally reached our own. And so what a kiva is a significance of going back down and, going into those worlds and connecting with, all of the different religious tenets of any given group of people at that time. So each kiva has something called a sipapu, which is a nice pipe that goes down, and that's supposed to represent going even farther down, but that's the world you cannot go to, hence the small pipe. So that was a really fascinating excavation to get to be a part of. We excavated an intact jet ring, which I know is there's less than 10 of those that have been found. So that was really cool. From there, I ended up going to the Wyoming Dinosaur Center and working in the Morrison Formation, which is Middle Jurassic, and working on Camarasaurus as well as Allosaurus material. Camarasaurus is a long-necked sauropod dinosaur, and Allosaurus is a theropod dinosaur, much like T-Rex, only much smaller and much older. So that's some of the stuff I worked on from there, and everything kind of really started to branch out from there. Going to UNM offered me a lot of hands-on opportunities to develop my skill set in both archaeology and paleontology.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Sounds like there was a lot of opportunity in living, like you said, where there's a lot of archaeology. It's quite very interesting, especially if you're at a young age. You're like, wow, this is amazing, and how do I get involved? And then you get into it.
Yeah, I feel very lucky coming from New Mexico because it's not like that in all of the United States. New Mexico just has a really unique, sedentary occupation of a lot of, really built up Puebloan peoples. So they had huge, massive structures like Chaco Canyon. Thousands and thousands of people would live there. Like, for example, before the first Pueblo revolt in the early 1600s, there was actually 30,000 people living in the Great House in Jemez Springs, and that would have been a population density for an area of that size that would have rivaled Manhattan today. So it is just really cool to get to grow up in that kind of environment where that's just a normal thing. Having some of the first lithics you see being black obsidian. I just feel so lucky to get to do that because so many other people, who do archaeology, even in different parts of the U.S., have, a lot less material that's still there because the area is more built up.
What I've seen from your pictures on Instagram looks like you kind of look, well, you said you're the fossil, working a fossil museum, or like the manager. So what do
Yeah,
you kind of do
so
now?
I was a collections manager at the World Fossil Finders Museum. Actually, a few weeks ago, I actually left that position to pursue another position at the Indiana Dinosaur Museum that's under construction in South Bend. That allows me a lot more scientific freedom to do the kind of research I want with a lot more funding and better pay. So what I'll be doing is working with the South Bend Chocolate Company that is building the Indiana Dinosaur Museum, and that is going to be a very large academic institution. We even have massive bone beds out in Montana and Wyoming with hundreds and hundreds of long neck dinosaur bones coming out. And we have Triceratops stuff. And we're even going to be putting an Edmontosaurus, which is a Cretaceous duck-billed dinosaur mummy, on display for people to see. So that's my current institution, and I am the chief preparator at this institution. So what I do is I do all of the fossil preparation, as well as, I do a lot of research, and I'll be a big part of any excavation that we do.
Yeah, it sounds really amazing. Like, so jealous. Like, I wish I could come to America and just do some archaeology, just experience what it's like. I mean, where you were digging like a couple of days ago, the view was
In Vermont.
amazing. Just on the river. It's crazy.
It was just that's Vermont for you. Vermont is, I'd never been there until I came out to visit. And oh my gosh, some of the most pretty areas I've ever worked in. Like that backdrop, there was an eagle flying over that I saw earlier that day, like a bald eagle. And, those salmon swimming in the rivers. It is just, and you got maple trees all over the place, and everybody's nice and friendly, and all the houses are like old Victorian style from the 1700s. It's, if you ever come to America, I highly recommend going to Vermont.
Well, one of my biggest goals is to go to Canada at some point, not to do archaeology, but because it's my favorite thing in the world is ice hockey as well as archaeology. So yeah, Canada is on the list.
I love Canada. I've been to Vancouver and Victoria before, and I would highly recommend it. Canadians are a lot more nice than Americans, although Americans are pretty nice too.
I mean, we've worked with a couple of Canadian guys and a couple of American guys and girls, and I've loved like every single one of them, and they've been really friendly, really nice, and like it's nice to get people's different perspectives of like archaeology around the world. And yeah, I mean, I think
everybody has different methods.
Yeah, everyone has different methods.
So tell me more about some of the sites you've done in London and everything. I want to hear more about that.
Well, I've actually not dug in London, but most recent one I would say that I'm most proud of, because I'm a supervisor in a commercial company, so I kind of manage excavations and evaluations. And recently I was in Bicester, which is near Oxfordshire, if you know whereabouts Oxford is.
Yeah, I know where Oxford is.
And it was the seventh Roman vineyard in the UK, and it was like across 2 fields. It was just mental. Like, I mean, there was no finds there really, because it was just where they were growing grapes for wine and stuff like that. But all you can kind of picture is just loads of narrow, long Roman furrows, just every 8 meters, I think.
Did you guys still have all the mounds and everything from that?
No, it was just basically all the furrows that were dug like in a line.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then obviously when we excavated each one, it was just so irregular, like where the roots were going underneath the natural kind of soil. The only thing we kind of found was Iron Age and Roman pottery, because there was an excavation done nearby where they found a roundhouse, an Iron Age roundhouse, and kind of more of the vineyard. So I was doing like the second phase of the excavation, and it was crazy, like to think that this is quite rare, to find in the UK.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and after that, I went straight to like a Roman site in Milton Keynes, which is kind of near London.
Okay.
It's about an hour by car, so I guess it's quite close, I guess.
Oh, that's not bad at all.
And that was a major Roman site, which the first phase of it I actually did with another company, and then the second phase was when I was a supervisor, so I was managing it. So it's kind of weird.
That's
I was
cool.
working next to a site that I started off as a field archaeologist, and then the next bit I'm a supervisor. So um, I think that, yeah, the main things we kind of found were I found about 5 cremations. It's still in urns, and
Whoa,
yeah,
for real? Like the
yeah.
materials still, wow,
I mean,
that's
the
amazing.
only sad thing was because of ploughing and farming, it kind of destroyed some of it. So you only had the base and the bone still inside, and some of the nails where they would have been put in wooden boxes.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I kind of did like a cremation per day because we had a tight deadline, um, and not enough people as usual in commercial.
Of course, yeah.
And, and it basically was just like a Roman kind of living area. It wasn't like a villa or anything. It was just loads of ditches, loads of enclosures, and it was kind of phased with Iron Age and the Romans. So we had like a lot of Iron Age pottery from ditches and just tons of Roman pottery. I mean, we found like this huge pot in situ that was in the natural, which was very weird. It was kind of next to this large enclosure ditch.
Interesting.
But yeah, it was. I mean, there was a lot of. We did find some kiln kind of material where they would
Wow.
kind of spaces inside the kiln. But I do remember on the first phase of that site, I did find a kiln on the side of a ditch, which had like we found like a pig, a horse, and a cow skull in the ditch next to it, which was a bit weird. And then we did find like 30 cremations on that site as well. So
That's just amazing that you still find the cremations in the urns. That wow. What
because
kind of soil was this stuff preserved in? Was it really clay, thick clay, or?
it's like glacial layer, it was very
Mhm.
clayey and yeah, it was horrible in the winter because it was like the Battle of the Somme or something. But it was, yeah, very silty clay, and just if it's sunny and really hot, it'll just bake and crack, and you can't dig it. And when it's winter and it's raining, it'll just flood instantly. Um, but yeah, it was kind of preserved. I mean, the ones in the first phase were in like a little mound, like
Okay.
there was like 2 ditches, and then in the mound in the middle, there was about 30 cremations. So I'm guessing they kind of put 2 ditches and put it on a mound so it wouldn't flood and get damaged, where the burials were. I think we did find a part of a cranium as well in a gully, which was
Oh wow.
rather strange.
Just random
Just
sitting there.
Yeah, just random body parts everywhere. But
Oh wow, these Romans.
yeah. um, but yeah, I think they were better preserved than the ones I did because the mound was found quicker, and so they didn't kind of dig into it. They kind of just left it, and then that's where they found complete urns. And I think at the time I was metal detecting and found like little coins inside and kind of stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, what I've mainly done in my kind of career is Roman and Iron Age, a little bit of medieval, but yeah, mainly Roman and Iron Age. That's pretty much all I've done so far. And obviously the recent Paleo channel, um, which we've been
We'll
doing.
have to, whenever the border opens up, we'll have to get you out to dig up some dinosaurs here in the US.
Damn straight. I'd love to do
Maybe South
that.
Dakota or Montana.
Damn straight. I'd love to do that. That'd be amazing. Obviously, you would have to come to the UK if I start a project again. I'll try and get
I'd
you
love to be a part.
because I also manage an excavation in Italy, this Roman child cemetery. So
Wow.
I can get kind of people on a list for if they want to come and volunteer. So you're welcome to
That's
come and do that
cool.
as well, because we do have a couple of other Americans who are specialize in baby skeletons and stuff like that. So yeah,
That's cool. I've done skeletal burial excavations before, but nothing with babies. So that would be really interesting to take part in.
it's crazy. I mean, it's kind of we found out that a lot of the children died from malaria because you can see
Mm.
the kind of eye sockets where it's kind of deteriorated, and it's kind of eating away at the bones and stuff like that. It's quite horrible, but it's interesting at the same time. So
What has been your favorite thing that you've dug up so far when it comes to like any individual artifact? Has it been some of the Roman coins, or what has it been?
I'll probably have to say probably the kiln what I did by the ditch, because I mean at that point I was still kind of brand new and I was still just an excavator, and I think I was machine watching, and then I was finding nothing, and I was like, someone else can take over. I'm bored of this now. And then as soon as they took over, they found this kiln, and I was like, oh my god.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's
That
too
always
typical.
happens. As soon as you trade units, that's when they find the
Good
most
stuff.
significant piece.
And then, so all it was that kind of remained was loads of these kind of burrito-looking things, but they were
Hmm.
spaces that would be inside the kiln. And
Oh, okay.
we was so trying to imagine like there was a large ditch, very dark, silty soil, and then on the right on the edge was a kiln where we found all these burrito-looking things. Obviously, it's collapsed, and over time, found kind of like CBM, well, not CBM, kind of Watland daub, kind of in that would have been the actual outside of it, and then I think we found some pottery, but I'm not sure. But it was just amazing to see the kind of remains of where people were working, making things and stuff like that. I mean, to be fair, I've not really found any amazing finds like a brooch or gold, or a lot of people say, "Oh, you found gold" and all that stuff. It's like, no.
I get that all the time. When I was digging in Deadwood, it was a public archaeology dig, and we were digging up an old opium den and a gambling house, and we just happened to find the gold mining flume. And people would always walk by, and they'd be like, "Have you found any gold yet?" And I'm like, "All the Deadwood Badlands, because this is where people were poor.
Yeah.
Nobody had a gold nugget here. Air out of Deadwood real quick."
Yeah, I get that a lot. It's like, so if you're around builders and you're doing work for them, and they're like, "Oh, you found gold yet? You found any dinosaurs?" It's like, shut
No,
up.
not quite how that works.
Not how it works. But I mean, yeah. So I was going to ask how. I mean, it's probably a boring question, but how has the coronavirus affected your work this entire year?
So, I hate to say it, but it's very strange. This has been the most successful year of my career so far, strangely enough. So last December and November in 2019, I was actually doing a whole lot of work in the New Mexico film industry. I was having a hard time finding work in archaeology, so I was working as a prop assistant for several films, as well as acting as a background extra, featured background. I even had some lines in a few movies. News of the World is coming out with Tom Hanks next year. It's a Western I got to be a part of. So that'll be cool. That's December 25th this year. So
That's amazing.
But in January, I was vacationing in the Ozark Mountains in Arkansas, and I got a call to come dig up Deadwood from one of my old professors at UNM had found me a position. And so I ended up cutting my trip short, and I didn't even go back to Albuquerque. I just flew out of Memphis, Tennessee, and flew into Rapid City, South Dakota. And, I just started working on excavations out there. And then at the same time, a friend of mine had been building a museum. So he offered to have me come in. And so while I was there, I was kind of working for both institutions at the same time. So during the week, I would do archaeology projects in North Dakota, South Dakota, or Montana or Minnesota. And during the weekends, I would be doing excavations in Nebraska or South Dakota for paleontology. So this year has been really cool. I relocated to the Black Hills, lived in really the heart of it, about 5 minutes from Mount Rushmore in Hill City. That was really cool. Saw buffalo every day on my way to work. Yeah, and I just got to do a ton of really awesome projects up here. But Deadwood, it was one of the most fun digs I've ever done. We did it, most of the dig was around -3 degrees outside, which I don't know how to convert that to Celsius, but that's about 37 degrees below freezing. So it's
Okay.
very cold.
Yeah.
And we also, what we were doing is we excavated a gambling den, an opium den. I mean, I found some intact opium pipes that had been, probably taken from China themselves by immigrant peoples. We found 14th century Chinese coins in Deadwood, South Dakota that had been used as gaming pieces. And the cool thing is, I don't know if you've ever seen the TV show, but in the TV show, there was a pig pen where all the murdered people would get fed to pigs. And that was in the Chinatown in the show. And there's always been kind of a wives' tale about whether or not that actually happened. And I was lucky enough to be one of the people who excavated about 9 pig skeletons there. So
Wow.
hopefully now that I'm not working for that specific CRM company, and now that there's not a conflict, I'll be able to do nitrogen studies on some of those pigs to determine what they were eating in their diet. So that would be kind of cool. If they have humans in them, that would be a fun project. I definitely think people would appreciate that poster at SAA. So
Definitely.
yeah, so kind of what I've been doing here. But before that, when I was in New Mexico, I was kind of doing digs here and there. So I would do excavations with the New Mexico Museum down in the Permian formations. That's around 214 million years ago from what is left of Pangea. We would dig up early reptiles there down in Socorro, New Mexico. And I would also go up to Espanola, New Mexico, which is just northwest of Santa Fe. And we would excavate Gomphotherium productum material, which represents the most successful proboscideans in North America. These proboscideans came to, the continent and actually ended up surviving this one species for 7 million years. I mean, just think about how successful that is, in comparison with us who have only been around 300,000 years at some of our highest estimates. So I was lucky enough to do that. Like I said, I did the dig. I dug up the commoner structure in Jemez, which was really fascinating. You could actually see the differences in occupation through the layers. So what had happened is after the Second Pueblo Revolt, it's actually a really sad story. The peoples had been taken over by the Spanish, and the Spanish had decided to level half of the structure and put a mission there. And the mission is where the Catholic Church ended up sending the alcoholic priests and the pedophile priests. And they ended up sending these people to one of the most beautiful areas in the United States, and a very sacred area to the indigenous peoples, which is a shame. But we found, we could see in the stratigraphy how we would find broken wine bottles and, rosaries and stuff in the upper layers. We even found a piece of Spanish armor and some swords. And then you would go down to the lower levels, and then you would find artifacts that are associated with different indigenous groups that was in between Pueblo revolts. When the area was abandoned, you could actually see different groups that had moved in for very brief periods of time, probably as a result of the rich game resources and the obsidian resources and, the accessibility to water, which is very precious in the Southwest. And then at the lower levels, we were able to find all sorts of stuff. So we found a bobcat skull, and then I found an 8-year-old shed tooth, which was very cool. We found some intact pottery that was corrugated. And we also found several bone awls, and then a huge obsidian core about the size of my fist. So that was something else. And I also found an Aztec style blade in this site that had been used as part of an Aztec style club, which means it's very possible that this piece of obsidian had been taken all the way from Teotihuacan down in central Mexico, where modern day Mexico City is. So it was really cool to get to excavate that. I believe in one of the other structures, they even found some macaw skeletons, which is evidence of trade. Very, very cool excavation.
Wow. I was about to ask what discovery or work are you most proud of, but I guess you may have just told me.
Oh no, I hate to say it, but that's definitely not it.
Oh my god.
Um, that's a really tough one. I would say there's three different discoveries that I'm particularly proud of. Most of them, if not all of them, are all paleontology. I hate to say it, paleo is my first love. But I excavated when I was working with the Denver Museum of Nature and Science in 2016 in Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument in southern Utah. What we were doing is we were doing prospecting into Comparowitz Formation, which is around 70 million years ago, and it would have been what was along the Laramidian coastway. So during the age of the dinosaurs, North America was split up into two continents. You had Appalachia, which is the eastern half of the US, and then you had Laramidia, which is the western half of the US. And splitting through the middle, think of Kansas, South Dakota, Texas, Oklahoma, that was all underwater as part of the Western Interior Seaway. So this area of Utah was the coastline. And because of this, we have a very strange diversity in what's known as ceratopsian dinosaurs. Those are frilled dinosaurs, much like Triceratops. And we found several new species while excavating there. I was also lucky enough to find and be a part of a team who found a articulated ankylosaurus tail, ossified tendons still on the tail. Now, an ankylosaurus, think of it as the tank of dinosaurs. It's got a giant tail club on the back, and it is covered head to toe with armor. It is multi-tons. It is a very cool animal, and finding the tail club was very awesome. So that's my first one. My second one was my second dig ever when I was like 19 years old, doing paleontology. I was excavating in the Pure Shale Formation, which represents the Western Interior Seaway I just mentioned around 70 million years ago, in Hermosa, South Dakota, which is directly east of the Black Hills and directly south of Rapid City. And we found a 3-foot long Cretaceous Tothotuchid. And a Tothotuchid is a carnivorous squid. And we found a 3-foot long fossilized body of this animal.
Oh my god.
That was amazing. That was very cool. That's been prepared, and it's now in the collections at the South Dakota School of Mines and Technology in Rapid City in their collections. And then the third one would have to be the Titanotherium skull that I just pulled out of Nebraska a few weeks ago. I don't know if you saw on my Instagram, but we pulled out a very rare species of Titanothera from the middle beds of the Shadron Formation, which is around 35 million years ago. And think of it as a giant American rhino. That's what we do. And we found a beautifully preserved skull that we were able to take back to the museum. And me and Riley, the curator at the World Fossil Finders Museum, we pulled this thing out on a sled for like 2 miles, and it ended up just being immaculate. We originally thought it was a juvenile, and it turned out to be a really rare species from the middle beds, because the only areas that have really been worked is the upper and lower beds. So getting to excavate in pretty much virgin territory and discovering a skull on like your second day in the field is really
lucky.
Very cool. Very, very cool. So that those would probably be my 3 favorite finds so far.
So what I was going to ask next was other people who may be interested in paleontology and archaeology, maybe specifically the kind of work you're into, how would you recommend they would get involved the best way, like you did?
So that's a really great question. I recommend getting involved with your local natural history museum and trying to become a volunteer there. So in this field, experience is king, and education is also very important. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to study either geology, evolutionary anthropology, biology, or even medical science if you want to get into paleontology. I highly recommend geology with a little bit of ecology or maybe stratigraphic research if you want to get into paleo. Try to volunteer at your local natural history museum, whether it be in the collections or whether it be in the fossil preparation facilities in the labs. That would be my recommendation. Getting your hands on some bones is the most important way to learn how to work with bone. And I would be to also just email paleontologists, look on Instagram, look on LinkedIn, look on Facebook. You'd be surprised just how approachable a lot of the greats in this field are. I mean, if any of you guys are interested in the US and you want to come out on a dig, shoot me a message on Instagram at DinoGuy1997, and I'll see what I can do to hook that up. People are very approachable. When the pandemic is over, make it a point to go to the Society of Vertebrate Paleontology annual conference every year. You'd be surprised how easy it is to actually network with people you've seen on documentaries growing up with, Robert Bacher, Jack Horner, all of these people. And really, paleontology is a difficult job market. Make no mistake, it is difficult, but like any field, if you work hard enough and you're dedicated towards, your goals, and if this is something you really want to do, then it can be very, very rewarding. So anybody that has an interest in it, I would just recommend networking with other people who have interests, watching YouTube channels like PBS Eons, and just trying to teach yourself while going to school. That is the best way to do it.
Sounds great. Because obviously I'm trying to create a community of people who can talk to each other. Say if someone wants to experience this, and they can contact them, and then they can go and help them. It's just to kind of get everyone together and helping each other out, and just kind of it's cool to kind of get to know people around the world who do archaeology and different types of realms of archaeology, like with your paleontology. I spoke to a person in Australia a couple of days ago who does geoscience.
Oh, cool.
And she does, because in Australia they find a lot of caves where they find indigenous people were kind of living. And I mean, I kind of just do the standard dig a hole and find stuff. So it's kind of cool to find, talk to these people like you and other people about specific areas of archaeology.
Oh yeah, I completely agree. I think what you're doing here with your channel and anything that's science communication related is important for getting the next generation out there and digging and learning, because we are really experiencing a renaissance, I think, in paleontology and archaeology. And the more young people we get out there excited about what we're hearing, what's going on, the better, if you ask me. So I think it's really cool.
So my last question is, I've been asking people towards the end about what they think should be more spoken about in archaeology, such as a lady from the UK said to me that women's history is not spoke about that much, and stuff like that. So do you have anything that you think hasn't been spoken about enough or should be raised?
I do, yeah. So studying archaeology has really opened my eyes to some of the excavation biases we can have when it comes to what level of social stratification we excavate. And so many times through the history of archaeology, whether it be cultural history, processual, post-processual, or current age, we'll still only excavate the most, for lack of a better term, charismatic, areas. So instead of excavating the commoner structure, we'll excavate the palace. But, you can actually learn more about the common man, which teaches you more about the reality of what it was like to live in any given culture by excavating a commoner structure than you'll ever learn by excavating an elite structure. So what I would like to see is a bigger focus on learning more about the common, man, woman, or, however people identify in indigenous times. I would like to see more focus on the everyman, for lack of a better term. And I would actually like to see a lot more focus on feminist archaeology as well, as you stated. In Deadwood, we found artifacts related to women, and there was about 274 men and only 3 women living in Deadwood. And so I would like to see a lot more research focused on some of the stories of immigrants, and some more about how women live their lives in archaeology. And I think that's one of the some of the information we can garner by studying commoner sites a little more. Yeah, so that's kind of what I would like to see done. Also, it would be I would be interested in seeing a lot more of the grave goods and stuff that hasn't been yet repatriated in the United States. I would like to see that repatriated to the respective tribes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we need to have a conversation about, some of the poverty in our current tribes, and how, the lack of food and food deserts, lack of accessibility to nutrition is leading to things like diabetes. I would like to see people talk about some of the reasons why we have, massive, unacceptable numbers of missing female Indigenous women from almost across the board in the United States. And I would like to see the poverty in places like Pine Ridge addressed as a human rights crisis, because this in modern America, we should not see third world level poverty like this. These people should have new houses. These people should have plumbing. Nobody in America should have to worry about not having running water like what's going on in the Navajo Nation right now. And I think we just need to grow together as a society. And we need to respect a lot of the treaties that were disrespected in the past, kind of like what Oklahoma has done with the recent ruling. So I think there's a whole lot of work to be done, but I think that's the important part about archaeology. As a white person, it allows me to try to, learn more from another perspective. And it would be nice to see more people in my position do the same thing.
Yeah, I think sounds very important, like what you said. And thank you for sharing everything that you shared. And it's been great to speak to you.